All right. It is 10 o'clock. We're going to begin in just a moment.
Maybe like spell around maybe like 13 minutes.
That's fine.
Alright. Okay. Ready.
Go ahead. Well, first let me introduce the conference. Hello, friends. This is Dr. Sebastian Mahfood. I have with me here, either live or virtually, 14 students from the Crossing Borders Language and Power course taught at Webster University in the fall of 2016. These students have put together presentations on the use of language and the way language affects the way in which we interact with one another in the world, the way we interpret the world, the way we're allowed to engage it, and so on. So, beginning with us is Jasmine Hsieh. Am I pronouncing that right, Jasmine?
I would say Hsieh.
Hsieh. Okay. Jasmine Hsieh, and her presentation is entitled How Has English Impacted Chinese, Mandarin, with a focus on Taiwan and China. With that, I'll turn it over to Jasmine.
Hello everyone. So first of all, I'll go through a little bit of overview of my presentation. First, I will talk about the history background, like how and why influence started to influence China. And then I have a learning style comparison before and after the influence with a point as an example. And we'll talk about the alphabet system in both China and Taiwan. And followed by that will be the vocabulary that were created in Chinese from English. And last, I have 4 examples of nowadays there's changes in Chinese syntax because of the syntax in English. Alright, so the early 20th century in China was not a peaceful time. There were a lot of changes going on in the country. Well, for example, the revolution forces, they had finally overthrew the very last empirical dynasty ever existed in China, and they established their new republic country in 1911. And there was also a time in China, despite once being the world's most powerful empire, was under a lot of oppression under Western countries. So here I have a picture of the emperor. That's how an emperor will look like to the first president of the Republic of China. And this is just an example of the Western influence. This is actually a meeting after a war in 1901 that China lost to these countries. So they were signing a treaty and China giving all the good stuff to all that 8 countries and whatever. So in the light of that, the young people and the educated people, they had a very strong sense of self-reliance and patriotism. It was at an all-time high. And of course, there are a lot of urges to improve the infrastructure, such as military, bridges, buildings, and all that. But there was also a call for an overall cultural reform movement. And that was the background for this Bai-Hua movement. So Bai-Hua, in its literal translation, means plain language. It's a literary style that used common expressions and vocabulary. So people in ancient China, they used to write in very condensed ways, which I will show in an example point. And under the influence of European languages, especially English, so people started to think that they should write in the same plain and clear. Basically, you write down what you say is what they're going for. So this is an example that I found. So here, that's the original poem. It only contains 27 words, 28 characters. And this is the meaning that it carries. Come home, an old man. I was young when I went away. My accent has not changed at all, but my hair is now gray. I meet some village children. Of course, none of them knows me. Smelling ever so sweetly, they ask me from where it came. Can I try to rewrite this would at least took me 62 characters to be able to convey the same meaning that traditional Chinese wrote in 28 characters. Here, so we're going towards the alphabet system. Most people know that Chinese characters do not constitute an alphabet system. But what you may not know is that there has been two systems of alphabet created, and each of them is currently being used in either Taiwan or China. The first one is Zhuyin. It was created in 1892, and it was popularized starting in 1910. So that's why it looks like it will go horizontally, like the first line, and then go all the way down. There's 27 alphabets. So I'll read through them really quickly so you have a sense what it sounds like. Here we go. So there are the 27 of them. But so in China, they started to think about all the influences from Western countries, and they wanted to better connect to Western countries. So in 1958, they actually changed their system to Pinyin system, which is the small Roman letters that you see besides the Zhuyin. So to me, personally opinion, I think this is a pretty big sacrifice because as you can tell, the Pinyin system cannot really grasp the Chinese pronunciation to its fullest extent. So it is to me personally, I think it's a pretty big sacrifice and influence they decided to do under the Western influence. So here is an example of all the vocabulary. Basically, anything like KFC and McDonald's, coffee, Coca-Cola, just all the words that did not exist in Chinese before and now created now because of English. So now, while that part, there were many examples of how people nowadays write Chinese differently before because of English. But here I'm only having more examples because of time limit. So the first one is using abstract nouns as the subject in a sentence. So this is an English sentence. You can say English this way. The decline in his income has led to a change in his lifestyle. So, as you can see that the decline in his income is a subject here, and it's an abstract noun. So below, we actually nowadays write in English in the same way, which means pretty much the same thing. But originally we don't really write Chinese this way, and I translated in English literally. It will be he, due to income decreasing, changed his lifestyle. Alright, the second example, the abuse of abstract nouns. So in traditional Chinese, people don't really use nouns in an abstract way. But here's an English sentence. The audience has a passionate reaction to the visiting professor. So here, the reaction was actually used as a noun instead of a verb. We do this in English all the time. So, but nowadays, so people are using the same way too. But actually, originally in Chinese, we would say the audience to the visiting professor reacted passionately. And the third one is abused in the indefinite article. Here is specifically a and an. So in English, we say he is a good man. So right now, people write in Chinese the same way, just basically he is a good man. But originally, you don't mean that. In Chinese, we don't mean it. We can just say he is a good man. And the last one, this is the one that I personally was criticized and corrected a lot when I was going through school in Taiwan. Basically, traditionally, there is no text point in Chinese syntax. There was just not. But nowadays, people write in text voice all the time because of English. Here's an example. She is considered the prettiest girl in her class. And in the below sentence of Chinese, pretty much in the same thing or grow in the same way, which is how people nowadays right now. But originally, we would say that her classmates consider her a 3-year girl in the class. So when I was going through school in Taiwan, whenever I write in Chinese voice, the teacher would, like reject it and make me change that. So here are all the references that I use. So yeah, this is my presentation. Thank you.
Oh wow, Jasmine. So since you're live online, I would like to thank you for such a good presentation and such a good analysis of the Chinese language from past and present. And if I understand you correctly, what you're proposing, what you're saying is that it's the English language that brought about change in the Chinese language from old to new.
Say that again. Sorry.
That the changes in the Chinese language were partially influenced by the use of English in China.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. So that would be a concrete example of English not only affecting the worldview of people who had to learn it, but affecting the linguistic structure of another language altogether.
Yep, that is very true. Like I said, I did not I don't know if that's like too much information, but I did not know about China. They were not using Zhuyin system. I didn't know that they were building out Chinese in English characters, the English letters. So when I finally know about that, it was a very shock to me. Can you ever imagine like people? If one day China becomes the world superpower, and the people in the U.S. started to say, okay, we're going to spell out English in Chinese now. That's how. So it was a very fundamental change, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one more way that English has had a major world impact. So how do you feel about, now that you know this, how do you feel about it? I mean, how does it affect your understanding of your own language and of your own traditions?
I don't condemn it because, time is well done. Chinese language itself has improved and changed too so much throughout the 5,000 years of Chinese language being existed. So I don't think it's a bad thing because you cannot stop things from improving, or changing and going on throughout time goes by. But I think it's important for us to also know the roots and the history. So that's why there's all this linguists like yourself and people studying history and preserving what it was before. So I think both sides are important.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any final thoughts or any final words for our listening audience? This will go global, so your friends in China may see it.
What did you say?
I said this will go global, so friends in China may see it once it's posted on Facebook. I know that that quite a few people in Africa are members of my Facebook groups, and they will also see it. And Africa is the continent that gave us the arguments from Ngugi wa Thiong'o in Chinua Achebe about whether or not English is a world tool or a world problem. So I think you've contributed fairly well to that conversation, just in that insight about the impact that English has had on the Chinese language.
Yes.
So any final thoughts?
Well, I think it goes both ways, So I'm sure today my subject was, how English has been changed. Maybe not as much, but I'm sure it goes both ways. So yeah, like my final thoughts will be like I think it's it's inevitable. Changes are inevitable in the history. So we shouldn't. My final thought is that we shouldn't think finger point and say, okay, English is bad because of this and that. I think we should embrace what's inevitable, but we can also preserve our roots, and so that there's education and research purposes. That's my final thought.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jasmine, for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right.